So now let's look at some of these attributes and just talk about some of the issues that come up with them. So categorical, as I said, it's a discrete set of values, and basically what when you're talking about categorical attributes, one thing that doesn't always become apparent. A categorical attribute can only hold one value at a time. So if you have that attribute in the representation of a particular individual, this means that this individual can only belong to one of those categories. Right? So if I have an attribute called genre, and these are the possible values, this would mean that a particular piece of music has to be either classical or techno. It cannot be both classical and techno, because a categorical attribute only takes one value. Right? If you want a piece of music if you want to be able to describe a piece of music as both classical and techno, you have to do it in another way. And you can't actually do it by saying genre 1 and genre 2. That would not be an appropriate representation. We'll talk about that a little bit later. So the categories are mutually exclusive. Now, when you actually code it up, those categories end up being turned to numbers. So maybe classical is 1, jazz is 2, rock is 3, and techno is 4, however many values you have. But it's critical to remember that they're not really numbers. So even though you represent them as numbers, you can't do with them the things that you like to do with numbers. Such as, you cannot compare which one is greater and which one is smaller, because is rock smaller than techno? That's a nonsensical question. You also cannot add them together, multiply them, take square roots, and do other things, because they're not really numbers. They're just a numeric representation. So one of the big gotchas in categorical attributes is, once you start dealing with data sets on a massive scale, synonymy becomes a really big issue. So, for example, social tags, that's one example of categorical attributes. But if you don't control the tagging process, then different people are going to tag similar pieces of music with different tags. Right? So somebody might have thought that this is a country music piece, and another person might call it a folk music piece. Now, country and folk are different labels, but they're synonymous. But they're only synonymous in your head as a human, because you know that they refer to the same concept. And a machine learning algorithm has no chance of figuring that out. So synonymy is a big challenge when you're dealing with categorical attributes.